In today's tutorial video, I'm going to show you how to fix some tensioning issues that you might be experiencing if you're knitting using the Norwegian knitting method. So when I first started using this method, I found that I was rowing out a lot. I was having tensioning issues. It was really hard to get gauge. So I started playing with how I wrap the yarn in my hand over here. And also what I did after I completed a purl stitch. And I'm going to show you both of those things because when you combine these two things, it will help fix your tensioning issues, whether you are rowing out. And what rowing out is on the back of the work on the wrong side where you see your purl bumps here, you're going to see a gap in between two purl bump rows, if that makes sense. So you're going to have 2 rows of purls and then a gap and then 2 rows of purls. And that can be corrected so that your tensioning is perfect on both your knit side and your purl side. So let's get to it. So the first thing you're going to want to do, and please make note that everyone knits differently. So the way that you tension your yarn in this hand is going to be different for everyone. So I suggest always playing with your tension to see where your gauge is at. So for some of us, we might have to wrap around our pinky finger a few times and then weave it through our finger in order to get gauge. It really is dependent on how you knit. So for me, for example, I will wrap it around my pinky finger and then I will go underneath my ring finger and my middle finger and then on top of my pointy finger. And that is where I get really beautiful tension and I usually can get gauge. But if I'm finding that I can't get gauge, I will wrap around a couple of times around my pinky finger. It really depends on the gauge and the yarn I'm using, how I'm knitting, what mood I'm in even. If I'm a little bit annoyed, I tend to knit tighter. If I am like relaxed and I'm watching my show and I'm having a grand time, I'll be looser and I need to tension up a little bit more. So it just really depends on a lot of factors. There isn't always just one wrap that does everything or one tensioning recommendation that is for everyone. So keep that in mind. So the way that I like to do it again is wrapping it around my baby finger here, my pinky finger, underneath my middle and my ring finger, and then on top of my my partner finger. And then we're going to do the Norwegian purl stitch. So again, if you're not familiar with how to do this purl stitch or how to do the Norwegian knitting method, I have other tutorials on the channel that you can go check out. So I definitely recommend that. All right, so this first stitch is always a little bit of a stinker. I always have to tension this up a little bit more than maybe the other stitches, and I will show you my secret on how to get perfect tension. So after we have tensioned up this hand, we're going to start purling. So again, our purl stitch for Norwegian purl stitch is the yarn never comes to the front of the work, which is absolutely amazing. Not only that, but the Norwegian method is a closed hand method. I find that this one does not hurt my hands at all, and I can knit for hours, even though I don't recommend that, but you can. You can knit for hours on end without any pain, which I love this method for that reason. All right, we're going to do a Norwegian purl stitch. So we're going to slide our needle behind this yarn. We're going to bring it to the front of the work through this first stitch as if to purl, like that. So it looks like that. We're going to do the dance. That's what I like to call it. We're going to bring this needle to the back of the work, pick up that yarn off of our finger, bring it to the front of the work and through that stitch. We've just created a first purl stitch. So now this old stitch can come off the needle and we're going to tighten it up. So I like to take my tail and give it a tug, but not too tight. You don't want your stitches too tight because otherwise you're going to be fighting them and that's not fun. So we're just going to give it a little bit of a tug and we're going to carry on. So your stitches should be able to move on your needle nice and beautiful. It shouldn't be too tight or too loose, right? So then the stitches I don't look like that. Like they're nice and snug, but not too snug. They're just perfect, right? And that takes time to learn. Okay, so we're going to tension up again. And again, that is going to be dependent on how you knit, right? So play with the tensioning to see what that looks like for you, okay? Wrap it around, bring it under and over, okay? Now we're going to do our first purl stitch. And this is where in Norwegian knitting, you can have tensioning issues. Most likely to have tensioning issues is in the purl stitch. Okay, so again, we're going to do our purl. Bring it through that stitch and take it the old stitch off. Now this is where you could get, if you don't do this step, this is where you can have rowing out issues on the back or tensioning issues or gauge issues, whatever. So this is what I like to do. After I've pulled that old stitch off and this purl stitch is complete, we're gonna very gently give our yarn, our working yarn, a tug. Just a little bit. It is, once you get used to this method, you're not even going to notice that you're doing it for every stitch. You're just not. It's just going to be beautiful and quick and simple and easy. Trust me. Okay, so again, we're going to show you one more time. We're going to go behind that yarn through the first stitch as if to purl, dance it to the back, pick up that yarn, bring it to the front and through that stitch. We've just completed a purl stitch. So now we can take that old stitch off. And this is what you want to do next. Give your working yarn just a little tug, just a very mild, nothing crazy. You don't want to be tugging it, but just a little, you're going to move your finger just slightly out just to give it a little tug. And it's going to make each one of your purl stitches absolutely perfect. It's really cool. Okay, so let's do that again. We're going to complete our purl stitch and pull that old stitch off. And then we're going to very gently give this working yarn a tug. And then you will have perfect stitches on the front and the back every time. And once you get going at it, you're going to get super fast and you're not even going to notice that you're doing it. In fact, when I am watching TV and I get so into the program and I'm not really watching what I'm doing, without looking down, I don't know if I've completed a knit row or a purl row. That's how natural it becomes when you're so used to it. I have to look down and be like, oh, that was a purl row. Okay. Right? So you can get good like that. Trust me. It just takes time and it takes practice. So if you're still having tensioning issues, after you've played with your tensioning on this hand and you've also give your finished purl stitch a little tug, it's like so little, it's just a little tug. That's all. And if you're still having rowing out issues or if your tension is still off, I suggest knitting a blanket. Just a little baby blanket. You can reuse the yarn after you've practiced. You can rip it out and reuse it for another project if you want. But I suggest knitting a tiny little baby blanket just to practice your tension. You're going to learn a lot about how your body naturally moves with this method. You are. I learned a lot. I knit a blanket. When I first started knitting this method, I actually practiced with the blanket because I was having such a hard time. I was so frustrated, right? After I learned this method and I was having tensioning issues and I could not get gauged no matter what I did. So I started practicing on a baby blanket. That fixed my tensioning issues. So I definitely recommend if you're switching methods or if you're having tensioning issues or anything like that is to knit a blanket. And if you're really struggling with that purl stitch, then purl the whole blanket if you want, right? But I suggest knitting and purling. a small blanket, and it's going to curl. The ends are going to curl because it's stockinette. You're building a stockinette. That's fine. It doesn't matter. You can put a border on it later if you want, or you can rip it out and use that yarn for a different project. But trust me, knitting a blanket is the best way to fix any kind of tensioning or gauge issues that you might have. It is awesome. I highly recommend. That's how I fix my tensioning issues. And now it's just second nature. You don't even think about it. And all of your purls and your knit stitches are going to be perfect. So I highly recommend that. So after a while, if you've been practicing for a while and you're still seeing that rowing out on the back, like I said, you're going to have, like, it looks weird, right? You're going to have, instead of these purl bumps being beautiful like that, right? And you have, I'm going to move this out of the way. You can see like rows of purl bumps and they all line up beautifully. But if that is good tension, but if they're not, and you're finding that there's like 2 sets of purl bumps and then a tiny little like space in between, and then another set of 2 purl bumps, that's called rowing out, and you still have tensioning issues. So I would definitely practice, and then it's going to be so much easier in order to get gauge for some of the patterns that you are wanting to knit. So definitely give it a try. Practice different ways of tensioning and holding the yarn, right? So maybe this is your way. Maybe wrapping it around twice and weaving it through your fingers is more like your thing, right? So maybe it's wrapping around your whole hand, then your pinky, and then like that, I guess this way. Maybe that's your thing, it's very personal. It really depends on how you knit and the way that your body naturally wants to knit. And you're gonna feel that out and realize what you need to do. So that is it for this tutorial. I hope this video helps you get beautiful tension and reach gauge every time. If you liked this video, buy me a coffee. I would love that. That would be fantastic. But if not, liking, commenting, subscribing to the channel is also very much appreciated. I would love that. My patterns and tutorials are available over on makeonerightKnit.com, makeonerightKnit.com. That's M1R.knit.com. I'm also that on all my social media and on Ravelry as well. So thank you so much for joining me, and we will see you next time. Bye now.